Today, we're going to be installing these BC coilovers on this 400Z. I also really prefer these little machinist rulers for measuring wheel gaps. All right, so for tools, you're going to want a 1/2 inch impact, a 3/8 impact, a 1/2 inch 19, a 1/2 inch 14, a 3/8 14, a 3/8 12. I'm using a 1/2 inch to 3/8 adapter just for a little bit better space, a 1/2 inch extension, and a 3/8 extension. You might need a 21 mil wrench. I didn't because this car is really clean and in great shape, and a little pocket magnet or something is helpful for the top of these strut bolts. So the first step is going to be getting the factory strut tower brace off. It's got one 14 mil nut on this stud, and then two 14 mil bolts holding it down there and there. From there, it's going to be sort of hard to see, but the struts are down below here, and it's a 12 mil nut on those three. That's where the little magnet comes in handy, because on this side, you've got these wiring harnesses kind of covering it, so you can just not worry about dropping the nuts down in there. All right, now in the wheel well with the wheel off, obviously, it helps to turn the wheel. It gives you a little bit better access to these control arm bolts in here. But first things first, there's three 14 mil bolts here, here, and here, these silver ones. You're gonna zip those out, and those are what holds this bracket to the control arm. Then this nut is a 19, and this is where you might need the 21 wrench, is there is a nut built into the backside of this in-link that is that stud. These ones came right off without it, but you might need that. Next step is going to be to read the instructions, which I'm not going to show, but they do note that this spring load is preset, and I don't recommend changing it unless you're doing something intentionally, obviously. So we're going to leave that for now. The next step is going to be to ballpark this ride height this customer in specific wants as near to stock of the OEM ride height as possible. So I'm going to measure this one, and then adjust this one to be close. They will be different with the weight on them just because of the preload and how much the spring collapses and that sort of stuff. So the stock one is about 22 3/4, and right now this BC is at about 21 3/4. So we got to extend this one about 1 inch. So we're going to take the wrenches they provided, not a flathead, and pop this collar loose here. Got those flip-flopped, and then loosen that lock nut. And to adjust the ride height on these, you just loosen this bottom lock nut and screw this up and down on the coilover body. Do not mess with the spring preload to set the ride height. All right, so we got this one set at 22 3/4 to match the other one. It's really nice when they give you this window here, so you can make sure you're still within safe thread engagement, which we are. We're right, we've got some to go. So we're more than good there. So we're gonna leave these loose, get these thrown on the car, get it back on the ground, and adjust them from there. All right, so now this part can be a little tricky. You wanna fish this back up through that ABS wire and get the nuts back on top. All right, so that's kind of a pain. That's a good spot if you have a partner in the house to bribe them with dinner to come give you a hand. Otherwise, you're just fishing blindly up over while holding. Kind of a two-person job, but we got it done. This is where I'm going to veer off the normal path a little bit, because we're also installing a pair of white line sway bars on this particular car. And since the sway bar and links is what bolts the bottom of the coilover up, we're gonna go ahead and head in that direction now. So I'll throw that in here just in case anyone else is doing the same upgrades we are. It looks like there's just a whole bunch of 10s that hold this splash tray on. So we're gonna get those off and then see what we're looking at. All right, so looks like we do gotta pull these Christmas tree clips. I was hoping we didn't. So we're going to grab these are some like Harbor Freight pliers, Jesus. I don't even really know what they're for, but they work great for these clips, so. So luckily it looks like there is absolutely nothing in the way of this sway bar, which is nice. Looks like it's gonna be 414s. Just like that, sway bar's off. So the sway bar is back on. Just a couple things to note. It does come with new bushings to fit it, obviously. Reuse the factory mounts. Make sure you put the supplied grease in there so you don't get a bunch of squeaks. This came with their new end links, which do change the nut that'll go here to a 21 millimeter instead of the 19 that it was. And to hold this on the back is a 19 millimeter instead of the 17 that it was. Other than that, that pretty much covers it. So we're gonna get that skid plate tossed back on, and then get back on mounting up the bottom of the coilovers. So from there, just gonna be throwing this little corner back together, slap this little bracket on, get those 14s and that new 21 in, and then the coilover install is pretty much done until we get the rears on, and then we'll be back to setting ride height up here, which is why we left this loose. Just like that, we are all buttoned up down here. I'm gonna drop the car back down, put that strut tower brace back on, and then that should be it. We're at the rear now. So it looks like we got two 12s up here. These are studs, so you don't have to mess with them from the top right now. 17, 17, and we're doing true coilovers. So we're gonna pull this bolt out, pivot it down, drop the spring out, and should be pretty simple from there. This is where it gets a little weird. For the extended adjusters, there's some like foam in here that I just went ahead and tore a little hole in. And then this is the plastic on the interior. So what I did is I took the top of one of these stock shocks that was in there and popped a hole in it with a screwdriver. And then I got one of these little hole markers, which is real handy. So we're gonna put this up in there, give it a shot of paint so we know where to drill through there for the extended adjuster. It should come out pretty clean. So we got this little green dot in there, perfectly centered, right where we need it to be. So now we can go in the trunk, pop that panel off, and drill that hole. So to get this center panel out, which needs to come out first, there's these little weird cargo tie-down clip things, but they basically are just a clip. So you just get in that little thing, pop it, pulls right out. And then the clips on this are actually all vertical. So you have to kind of pull the bottom out, pop this light out first, forgot to mention that, from the front, and unplug it, and then very carefully pry right where these are, and it'll pop up out. Then to get this panel out, it just pulls out sideways. There's a couple clips at the front. They're in there pretty good, but they're all horizontal. And there is 2 clips right here and here, little, similar to the tie down ones. There's one for each panel. And just like that, it's out. So we got our little green hole that we shot up in there. So now we're just gonna pop a hole through that real quick, pop it right back on. So we got the extended adjuster on here now. So now we got to fish this up through the hole we just made and get one of these screws on to hold it in place. All right, so now that that's attached, since we're doing the true from the divorced, you can't really measure like we did on the front to get a ballpark, but the bushings hold this thing more or less neutral when we unbolted it the first time. So I'm just gonna line this up to where this knuckle wants to naturally be and call that the starting point. So on the factory shocks, that nut is integrated. So BC provides a new nylock that fits the factory bolt. So throw that in, tighten it down. We're pretty much done. Now we just got to throw the wheels back on, put the interior back together, and then go around and set the ride height.